Hey everyone, and welcome to the season finale of the Paulitics Show. Today, we're going to be talking November 3rd, 2020. In other words, we're talking Election Day. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but today we're going to be talking about who I think and who I predict is going to be winning the presidency of the upcoming election. So, without any more to say, let's jump into it. So to begin today's episode, I feel like it's important to discuss the two campaign strategies of the two nominees, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So to begin, let's take a look with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is currently running on the basis of two different strategies, inflaming a culture war and keeping America great. So let's actually start with the latter. Let's start with keeping America great. To all the Trump supporters in my audience, which there may not be many, but let me pose this question. What about America is currently great? Because this is a question I seriously don't know the answer to. You know, we're in the middle of an economic downturn, partially due to Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus. We have 143,000 deaths at the day of the recording this due to the coronavirus. And we have these tumultuous civil rights movements throughout the country, these lootings and these riots, reminiscent of the Chicago riots of the 60s and 50s and 70s. So, what about the country is currently great? Is the country great that 143,000 Americans have died? Is it great that we're seeing a 16% unemployment rate? Is it great that there are 27 million Americans currently uninsured prior to the coronavirus, and then an additional 5.4 million thanks to the coronavirus? Is that what keeping America great looks like? If that's the motto of the Trump campaign, keep America great, or CAG as they're putting on their merchandise, they need to come up with a better campaign slogan. Because if this is what great looks like, I'm pretty sure people are going to want the opposite of whatever this is. But, you know, let's also take a look at his campaign strategy, his other campaign strategy, which is to inflame a culture war throughout the country. And, well, what does that mean? Well, basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to utilize the campaign strategy from 2016, where say that he is the only one who can solve the issues of the present day. In other words, he's tying Joe Biden to be this radical left-wing extremist, a socialist who wants to make America Venezuela. He's saying that Biden supports defunding and abolishing the police. He says that Joe Biden supports the riots, the lootings, the fires, the arson. He's saying that Joe Biden supports the murdering of police officers and turning America from a country of law and order into a country of death and destruction. He's strawmanning Joe Biden. Joe Biden unequivocally does not believe in those things. Undoubtedly does not believe in those things. But that's what Donald Trump is pointing and saying that Joe Biden believes. He's saying that Joe Biden wants to defund the police, when in fact Joe Biden has said on multiple occasions that he does not want to defund the police.
Do you support defunding the police?
No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community.
He has said that Joe Biden supports taking down statues and wants to erase American history, when in fact Joe Biden does not want to erase American history. In fact, he says that we have an obligation as a country to protect monuments, such as the Jefferson Monument. And what about the riots in the streets? Joe Biden has also said that he doesn't support violence.
There's no place for violence, no place for looting or destroying property or burning churches or destroying businesses, many of them built by the very people of color who for the first time in their lives are beginning to realize their dreams and build wealth for their families.
There is not a single person in Washington who actually supports the violence, the lootings, the arson, anything resembling of violence. There's not a single politician in Washington, D.C., in Congress, in the Senate, in the House, that supports what's going on in the streets. There's not a single person. So why is Donald Trump saying that Joe Biden supports these things when he unequivocally does not? Well, the fact of the matter is, it's politically convenient to peg your opponent as this socialist monster who hates America. You know, that's the other thing about Trump. He's saying that Joe Biden is a socialist.
And now Joe Biden and the radical left are trying to impose the same system, socialism plus, in America. Biden is a puppet of Bernie Sanders, AOC, the militant left, the people that want to rip down statues and monuments to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin.
Okay. First of all, Joe Biden is not a socialist. Let's put that out there right now. Joe Biden said that he'd veto Medicare for all if it was put on his table as president. He'd veto Medicare for all. A principle of a social democracy, not a socialist policy, a social democracy. He'd veto Medicare for all. He does not support the Green New Deal. Now, me and Joe can have our disagreements on those issues. That's perfectly fine. But he is by no means a socialist. If Joe Biden's a socialist, then I must be Karl Marx himself. I must be the father of communism. And I'm not. So he's very much not a socialist. But it's politically convenient for Trump to tag him as one. It's politically convenient for him and the right to then say that Joe Biden wants to bring America to the state that Venezuela is currently in, a failing socialist state, when the reality is he does not. In fact, he said that he would topple the Maduro government of Venezuela, but that's a totally different topic. So Joe Biden's not a socialist. He's not this far right. He's not this far left extremist. He's in all honesty, a Republican from the 1990s. He's a Newt Gingrich Republican. He's a John McCain Republican. He's a Bob Dole Republican. He's a Bill Clinton blue dog triangulationist Democrat. That's what he is. He's not a progressive. Far from it. I wish he was a progressive. I wish Joe Biden was a progressive candidate, because then Joe Biden would win. Undoubtedly would win in the middle of a pandemic, because as I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, everyone becomes a socialist during a pandemic. Everyone becomes a socialist during a recession. Except Donald Trump. And that brings me to my next issue. You know, there's this famous proverb that exists that says, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And the Biden team is clearly utilizing this proverb, because they've been utilizing what has been coined the Biden's basement strategy. What that means is he's been staying in his basement. He hasn't been doing many interviews in person. In fact, he really hasn't been doing many interviews, period. A lot of his surrogates are doing interviews. Whenever you go on TV, you see senators like Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar and Stacey Abrams. You see them vouching for Joe Biden rather than Joe Biden vouching for Joe Biden himself. This is the contrary. Typically, when you look at politicians of the past, even with Donald Trump in 2015, 2016, it was interview after interview after interview. Perhaps because it was good for the ratings, but at the very least, it was him on the air trying to vouch his positions, trying to vouch for why he should be the president. Joe Biden hasn't been doing that. And that partially relies on the aforementioned proverb. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And you might be thinking, well, that's not true for politics. And I have to disagree with you. And to disagree with you, I'm going to use the approval rating of George W. Bush in the past. At the lowest point of George W. Bush's presidency, his approval rating hovered at 25%. At the highest point, it was 90%. That's quite the substantial decrease in approval. However, post his presidency in the year 2018, so 10 years after he left office, his approval rating is 63%. That is quite the turnaround, considering that he was responsible for the Iraq War, in part responsible for the 2007 recession. He had horrible policies. So the turnaround and his absence made us as Americans grow fonder for him, particularly in the age of Obama and Donald Trump, two divisive figures in American politics. So that same thing applies here. Joe Biden, by not going on television every day, by not doing these interviews, by sending out his surrogates to not necessarily vouch for him particularly, but just vouch against Donald Trump, is doing Biden's work for him while allowing the American people to long for the times of a administration that wasn't in the middle of a crisis. So by sending out the surrogates, it makes the American people wish that they can have back Barack Obama and Joe Biden. It makes them long for the days of George Bush and for the lack of better terms, the sanity and the stability of the country. To quote James Carville, the former advisor to the President Clinton campaign of 1992, "It's about the economy, stupid." Currently, the economics of the American political system are seeing this downturn for the worse. We're seeing an unemployment rate that's rising. People are unable to pay their rent. People are unable to pay for luxuries. People are unable to have insurance because, unfortunately, the majority of insurance policies in the country are tied to your job. And when you have a 16% unemployed rate, well, you're losing your insurance as well. That's the unfortunate reality. It's about the economy, stupid. It's about how much money people have in their wallets at the end of the day. Under the Trump administration, due to the coronavirus and due to his handling of the coronavirus and his deflection and blaming the Democrats for the virus as a Democratic hoax, as he called it, he has not done a good job maintaining the financial status of each and every American. The American people are struggling. And that shows in the approval rating of Donald Trump throughout his presidency, but more specifically of his handling of the coronavirus and the economics of the current political status of each and every American. So let's go ahead and talk about those polls really quick. A few days ago, Quinnipiac University poll came out with a poll demonstrating that Joe Biden was up 15 points against Donald Trump. 15 points is an insurmountable lead. However, there's one quick problem with this poll. It polled the nation as a whole. It didn't poll individual states, and we live in a system of an electoral college. So individual states can control the election. It is possible for a person to only win 23% of the popular vote and still become president. That's the system we live in. Now, we can debate on a further issue on whether or not we should actually have that system, but that's a system we need to work itself in. So, knowing that, why shouldn't we trust a 15% poll as per the Quinnipiac poll showed? Well, we shouldn't trust it for two reasons. It doesn't poll individual states, and it's just polling the popular vote of the country as a whole, not getting into the nitty-gritty of, how many people in Texas support Joe Biden versus how many support Donald Trump. How many people in Ohio support Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. It's not getting into the specifics of swing state status. It's talking about the population as a whole. But the other issue with this poll is, and with all polls in general, people in the age of Donald Trump are one of two things. They are proud and happy and unapologetic in endorsing and loving each and every one of his policies, or they're fearful. They like Trump, but don't want to say it because they fear backlash from their community, their friends, their family, but are still going to vote for him anyway. Because that's private. Voting is private. What you say out loud is public. So, that's the other reason why perhaps we shouldn't trust polls. I mean, the majority of Americans don't think the polls are accurate, and maybe that's from 2016. But let me allow a note on that really quickly. In 2016, it was a really close election. The entire time Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, the fact of the matter was, the poll was in the margin of error. So that margin of error ranges from 2.8% to 5%. Hillary Clinton was only winning by 2.3%. That's easily within the margin of error for any poll. So when we take a look at that, we see that it was virtually tied between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. 2020 is different. It's not virtually tied. Donald Trump's losing. He's losing bad, according to the national polls. So when we say Quinnipiac poll, 15-point lead, that's what I'm referring to as a national poll. But when we refer to state-to-state polls, that's where you get a little bit different. When we refer to the states, we see that Joe Biden is, in fact, still winning. So now we're going to go ahead and jump over to my screen, so that way we can really delve into the swing state aspect of this part of the video. As I mentioned, the United States doesn't rely on the popular vote. We utilize the Electoral College. So in this upcoming election, there's a variety of different states that are going to be playing a key role in deciding who's going to win, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and list them, and then we're going to delve into the specifics. But those states are Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maine, Michigan, Georgia, Florida, Texas, and Iowa. Now, some of those states are safer than others. I'll admit that. For instance, Iowa, I'm pretty certain that's going to go red. And for instance, I am very certain that New Mexico and Minnesota are going to go blue. Those things I'm pretty certain about, given the polling and given the indications. However, some other states are a little bit more of a toss-up, such as Ohio or Maine, for instance. Those states are more of a toss-up, rather than states that are safer for blue or red. So, in this part of the video, we're really going to delve into what I think is going to happen in these given states. So to begin, let's talk about Arizona. Now, if you look at the 10 most recent polls in Arizona, you're going to see that 9 out of the 10, Joe Biden has won in the polls. Granted, some of these polls are within the margin of error. However, 2 of the most recent polls, they are not. Take, for instance, the OH Predictive Insights poll, where you see Joe Biden won 49%, whereas Donald Trump is winning 44%. The margin of error is only 4%. That's 1 point off from how much Joe Biden is winning by. So Arizona, it could be a tight race, no question. But if you look at the CNBC/Change Research poll, you'll see that Joe Biden is winning by 6 points with less than a 3% margin of error. I am getting fairly convinced that Joe Biden is going to be capable of taking Arizona. Nevada is a little bit of a different story. Generally, there hasn't been much polling that's come out of Nevada thus far. The only real poll that's recent is from May 6, 2020, and it showed Biden up by 4 points with a margin of error of 3.6. So the margin of error and Biden's lead are very similar to one another, but Biden's lead is still larger than the margin of error. So this is really a toss-up state. So it really can go either way, but given the other polls that have been conducted since March 31st of 2019, well, if we look at the polls, we'll see that Joe Biden has consistently winning against Donald Trump in hypothetical matchups. So, applying the trends of the popular vote from the Quinnipiac poll showing a 15% lead and a total lead of a median percentage victory of around 9 to 10% for Joe Biden, we can apply that same standard in Nevada and say that it's very likely that Joe Biden will also take Nevada this upcoming November. Next up is Wisconsin, which is breaking the trend of how much polling has come out of the state. Wisconsin is a very contested swing state this upcoming election. However, the polls still indicate that Joe Biden's going to win. And let's actually get into why I think Joe Biden's going to win the majority of these Rust Belt states. The Midwestern states, which Trump won, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. We talk about those states, and the fact of the matter is, Trump won them in 2016 because he ran a populist message against what he deemed Crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary, who voted to ship out their jobs overseas to China and Mexico and all these other countries which pay for cheap labor. She voted for NAFTA, for CAFTA, for normal permanent trade relations with China, and was known as this establishment figure. She was involved in establishment politics, something the country just hated and despised. But Trump is running on that same message in 2020. He's calling Joe Biden crooked, Sleepy Joe, and all these other names, and these tagging him with these elements of crookedness and corrupt. But when you are the incumbent and you have shipped out more jobs than the previous administration, which Joe Biden was a member of, perhaps the onus is on you to show the American people, the Michiganders, the people of Pennsylvania, the people of Ohio, the people of Wisconsin, the people of the Rust Belt, that you have the ability to bring back jobs. But no, he didn't. He shipped them out instead. So when we talk about bringing back the jobs, Joe Biden the other day recently signed a plan about buying America first, utilizing Trump's America First plan, but to create where we specialize in purchasing goods from American companies rather than purchasing them from overseas, from places like China. That's populism right there. That works in the Rust Belt. Absolutely. To quote Trump from his inauguration, the forgotten man and woman under the Biden administration will never be forgotten again. Perhaps that would be the case. Next, we're going to be talking potentially the most dramatic swing state of them all in this upcoming election, Texas. With Texas in particular, a lot of the statistics that have been coming out of here are either tied or within the margin of error. Take, for instance, the most recent poll out of Texas, which is a YouGov CBS poll, which showed a statistical tie between Trump and Biden. Trump is winning by 46% to Biden's 45% with a 3.3 margin of error. But that same day, a UT Tyler poll came out, which showed a 2.2 margin of error, with Trump losing by 5 points. Biden has 46, Trump has 41. These are very close races because there are other polls on here. For instance, take the UT Texas poll, which shows that Trump is winning 48% to Biden's 44% with a 2.8% margin of error. That's without the margin of error, Trump is winning. So it is likely that Texas is potentially going to be very pivotal in this race. If Trump wins, that gives him a better chance. But the second Joe Biden takes Texas is the second Joe Biden wins and Donald Trump loses. And now I actually want to go ahead and show you a quick clip of an ad that Joe Biden put out in Texas. And
I'm thinking of all of you today. I know the rise in case numbers is causing fear and apprehension. People are frightened, and they're especially worried about their parents, their grandparents, the loved ones who are most at risk. You know, this virus is tough, but we can stop the spread. But it's up to all of us to do it. We have to step up and do both the simple things and the hard things to keep our families and our neighbors safe. Wear a mask, wash your hands, stay home if you can, and socially distance when you go out. I want every single American to know, if you're sick, if you're struggling, if you're worried about how you're going to get through the day, I will not abandon you. We're all in this together. We'll fight this together. And together, we'll emerge from this stronger than we were before we began.
this ad, granted, was void of policy, but it showed in America and it showed in Texas, which is, as the ad describes, tough. He knows and he's taking advantage of the fact that Texas is struggling. They're one of the epicenters of the coronavirus, Florida being hit the worst. But Texas isn't far behind. In one day, they saw 10,000 new cases. 10,000 new cases in one day. With no national response, no national mask mandate, no economic stimulus to the people other than a crumbs of $1,200 to not even all Americans. The Texans are realizing that perhaps Joe Biden might be in a better path than the path of Donald Trump. But let's also talk Florida, because Florida is also one of those swing states that everyone likes to talk about. It's a 29-vote electoral college state, so let's talk about it really quickly. Now, I want to admit really quickly here that this is purely anecdotal what I'm about to show you. But a few weeks ago, CNN sent a crew to Florida and talked to people that used to vote, that voted for Trump in 2016. And here's what they had to say.
Based on my friends, he doesn't have a chance. He blew it.
John Dudley is talking about President Trump, who he supported 4 years ago, but won't again.
He had everything. We were so excited in the beginning. A businessman to run our country like a business. And it hasn't happened. All he succeeded in doing was he juiced up the stock market, and now that's gone to pot because of the coronavirus.
Dudley is a retired banker and the face of a new Trump campaign worry, losing the senior vote. Amid summertime signs of anxiety, from the beach to testing sites for soaring COVID cases. Here in Florida, people 65 and older made up 21% of the vote in 2016. Trump won that group by 17 points. Polls now show Joe Biden with an edge among seniors in key battleground states and nationally.
I had to change parties. I could not do this anymore.
Paula Schelling abandoned the Republican Party. Marcia Lund still considers herself a Republican, but not a Trump one.
I hope that I was wrong in not voting for him and that he would turn out to be a great president. But it didn't happen.
Do you know any people who voted for Trump last time who are not going to this time?
Actually, I know several.
You do?
Including my son and grandson.
The airwaves are already noisy, including this Trump ad questioning Biden's fitness for office.
Polls are also showing that Florida might flip blue. And if that happens, the fact of the matter is, it spells game over for Donald Trump. If Joe Biden wins Florida and Donald Trump loses Florida, there is no path other than a miracle for Donald Trump. For a variety of reasons, I have to say that I do firmly believe that Joe Biden will become the next president of the United States. Now, will Joe Biden be able to serve an entire term? That's to be seen. I'm not sure. In fact, I really don't think so. I think that if he chooses a strong candidate, a strong vice presidential candidate, unquestionably he can win. We are facing these unprecedented times, as I'm sure that you've heard in every email you've received from a college, from your place of work, from family members. I'm sure that you've heard that term thrown around time and time again, unprecedented. Well, because it's true. We are living in unprecedented times. We're living in a time where 143,000 people have died from a virus which, granted, couldn't be prevented, but could have been mitigated more. We could have taken the New Zealand approach or the German approach. Any one of those approaches would have been fine. But we opted not to. We opted to call the Democratic hoax and do nothing about it for months. Joe Biden's going to win. As of July 20th, 2020, if something radically changes, that is my position. Joe Biden is going to win the presidential nomination. Not because he's a well-liked candidate, far from the opposite. His enthusiasm rate is sinking. It's horrible. Trump's enthusiasm rate among his supporters is fantastic. Let that be noted. But let this also be noted. That doesn't matter. We are seeing unprecedented times of unemployment like no other, like the Great Depression. We're seeing uninsured rates like no other. Pre-Obamacare days, pre-Bush days. These are scary times for a lot of people. And to a lot of people, they want to revert to a time of normalcy and sanity and want to get away from this bombastic billionaire game show host. And I know to a lot of Trump supporters, they might think, well, Joe Biden's corrupt. He's in bed with China. He wants to bring Venezuela to America. He's not. Joe Biden is a moderate Republican. He is. And he has the possibility and the potential to bring us back to the state of normalcy of the Obama era, of the Bush era. Granted, those are what brought us to Trump. But he has the potential to bring us back to the sense of normalcy in America and eliminate this wave of populism of Donald Trump. With that said, this is where I would like to end Season 1 of the Paulitics Show. It means a lot to me that each of you took every Monday and Friday, or whenever you happen to watch these videos, and take the time out of your day to sit down and watch a 19-year-old college student rant in front of a camera, talking about things that most people aren't interested in. I'll be honest, no one's really interested in talking about the stimulus package or why DC should be a state. I know that. But I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and listen to my videos. Next season is going to be a little bit different. My interviews are going to be in person, hopefully. If the coronavirus doesn't improve, they'll continue to be over Zoom. Next season, we'll be talking about a variety of different factors. We'll be sure to have an updated video on who I think is going to win the election a couple weeks before the election is, or perhaps the week before. The show will be back, but I return to school on August 5th, and as such, I think it's appropriate that I end it here for now. But until then, until next time, I ask all of you to stay safe, be well, and thank you for watching.